Before the decade of the Ford Mustang ever existed, before the Dodge Charger, there was this one specific muscle car that terrified everyone on the racetrack and on the drag strip, and it looked like a Chevrolet Impala from the 1960s. This is the 1967 Ford Fairlane 427, one of the most terrifying machines before the Dodge Charger was even a name itself. So what exactly is the Ford Fairlane 427? Well, let me explain. The Ford Fairlane 427 is known for its engine size. That hinted that it was actually a 427 cubic inch 4-barrel V8 carburetor power plant. Known with 465 horsepower, this beast of American steel wasn't just fast, it was terrifying, brutal, and dangerous. Why? Because it doesn't look dangerous than just being gentle. This gentle giant became a Frankenstein of NASCAR history, dating to the rebirth of a muscle car that never seems to fully exist. But guess what? Ford made it all happen. They shoved in a 427 cubic inch V8 power plant, a monster of a V8 that was used in the 1967 Chevrolet Impala and including the Chevrolet Chevelle SS. When Ford decided to make muscle cars, they realized they would come up with the Ford Mustang, a subtle name that relates itself between 1964 and 1965. But what happens in 1967 is far more crazier. Ford decided to do one thing: drop a massive 427 cubic inch 4-barrel V8 carbureted power plant into this thing, a subtle Ford Fairlane sedan or a hardtop coupe. That's when the whole story went truly backwards. The Ford Fairlane is terrifying. It could basically beat Plymouth's best vehicles, such as the Plymouth Roadrunner and the Plymouth Superbird. This thing wasn't just a subtle sedan, and sometimes maybe the gentle giant was telling you a far more different story, and that different story was this: a 427 cubic inch V8 monster shoved into a 1967 Ford car that wasn't made to be built as a race car. But then, the whole race car epitome was completely swallowed into this thing, a 1967 Ford Fairlane. What most people don't assume to be one of the most American vehicles to ever produce a 427, this American monster was basically just it. Think about that for a second. It's 1967 and you got a Chevrolet Impala, but then you realize something else. Ford did the same thing by shoving the very same engine configuration into a Ford Fairlane, a mundane vehicle with no historical background for NASCAR racing, and that's when everything went completely together. The 427 V8, the very engine that was shoved into the Chevrolet Impala, the Chevrolet Chevelle Super Sport, was now being shoved into this, a 1967 Ford Fairlane, and it was known as the Ford with a Camaro heart. And that's when everything was just about right. Before the Chevrolet Camaro was even a name, Ford decided to do one thing. They shoved the very same engine configuration into this car and made it a monster. Ford was telling you a story about the Ford Mustang, but what they didn't even tell you is that there was something far more crazier than the Ford Mustang era. It was this thing, a 1967 Ford Fairlane. The car that became a monster. It wasn't meant to be a monster. It was supposed to be supple. It was supposed to be gentle. But sometimes, the gentle kinds of giants could remain dangerous. How dangerous? Well, a 456 horsepower V8 engine shoved into a tiny car from 1967 built by Ford, and then they decided to give it a true name. The 427 Ford Fairlane, a monstrous name that gave the car a monstrosity of power, and power becomes so obsolete that nobody else was dared brave enough to drive it. Why? because it felt like a Dodge Charger with a Ford Mustang's body and the soul of a Dodge Charger mixed together in this very vehicle. And sometimes, maybe the best giants didn't have to start with big bodies and big engines. Some of them may have the most unique stories, like shoving the Ford Fairlane's body inside of its original engine with this thing. The Ford Fairlane may actually be America's first American sleeper car because back in those days, muscle cars didn't even exist in the 1950s. No, no. Before, this was just a normal family sedan, the one that your grandfather would usually drive on weekends and then give it to you as a 35-year-old. The history of the Ford Fairlane didn't just become an evolution, it became the revolutionary story that began with the muscle car era in the 1960s.